So in the process of building our model of the firm, what we need to understand is what happens to this business as it tries to expand. So as we produce at different output levels, how easy or how difficult is it to expand? So in the short run, though, what we know is that the firm has a problem. What we've said is that it has at least one fixed factor production. So if it's going to get bigger, what it's going to have to do to get to increase output in the short run, what you have to do is you have to combine more and more of your variable factor. And generally, we tend to assume the variable factor of production is labour. It's generally relatively easier to get more workers than it is to build a new factory. So what we're going to do is to combine more and more of our variable factor with a fixed amount, with a fixed factor, a fixed amount of land or a fixed amount of capital. So what we're imagining is, what we're starting off by saying is we've got a business, it's got a fixed amount, it's got a fixed amount of land, it's got a fixed amount of, it's a bakery, it's got a fixed amount of ovens. We want to try and increase output, so what we do is we start adding workers to that business. So we add worker number one. There it is. There they are. Obviously, they can produce a certain amount of stuff. Doesn't really matter how much. Let's suppose that they add an extra 10. So whatever this is, it doesn't really matter. They're stuffing envelopes or something. They add an extra 10 units. Then let's imagine that we add a second worker. There he or she is. The question is, how much do they add? Is it going to be another 10? Is it going to be more than 10? Or is it going to be fewer than 10? In this example, probably there is a good chance that what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to do teamwork and stuff like that. Maybe they could divide their labour. They could specialise. They could use teamwork. The fact, maybe one of them's better at one thing and one of them's better at another. So instead of getting the first person adds an extra 10, maybe the second one adds an extra 15, taking us to a total at this point. Our total will be about 25. Our total there was 10 to start with, now it's 25. This number here is called marginal product. Each worker we add, we're saying how much extra output do we get. So that is our marginal product. And let's suppose we add a third worker. Again, maybe we can do further teamwork and division of labour. Maybe they add an extra 20. So now our total has gone up to 45. So there's lots of space, lots of equipment. They can all share it out. They can divide. They can specialise their work. But as you can imagine, what's going to start happening is as we add more workers, things are going to start going wrong. Not very wrong. We add a fourth worker, and they're probably going to be useful. They're going to add something. But maybe now we've run out of the ability to specialise. Maybe they're going to have to start sharing equipment. So although they add, maybe they add less than the worker before. Maybe they only add another 10, meaning that our output has now risen in total to 55. It's getting harder to increase output. And then the one after that, their scope for adding more is less still. Again, there's basically there's very little that they can probably do. There's a limited amount of space. Maybe when one of these people is taking a rest, they can do something. Maybe they add us an extra 2, taking output to 57. And finally, we add this sixth worker, and they're a total pain in the arse. And what happens is they just get in the way. And rather than adding to output, they stop these people from being able to do their jobs properly. And what happens is actually output falls. Their marginal product is actually -5, and total output falls from 57 to 52. And this is the assumption of this model, that as we expand in the short term, what's happening is that initially we have what are called increasing returns to the variable factor. Each worker, the variable factor of production, so in this case labour. Each worker adds more than the one before. Eventually, what starts to happen is the fixed factor of production starts to get overused, and we have diminishing returns to the variable factor. Each worker is now adding less than the one before, although our total is still going up. They're not completely useless. They haven't got as much space to operate in. They're making less difference. Until finally, we add a worker who really is now a nuisance. They're actually reducing total output. And what we have there is we have negative returns to the variable factor. What's actually happening is we add a worker. I mean, you would never do this, of course, if you're a business, because you're adding a worker, you're probably paying them some money, and what's happening is that they're reducing your total output. Their marginal product is negative. So what we're saying, if we sum that up, is that as we expand in the short run, initially we have increasing returns to the variable factor. The reason for that is that we have teamwork, and what we're saying is that each worker adds more than the one before. After a bit, what starts to happen, eventually, we have diminishing returns, decreasing returns, to the variable factor. And the reason is that the fixed factor of production gets overused. There's less space to work in, less spare equipment, and therefore each extra worker adds less than the one before. But they're still adding, and we'll examine this a bit more in a minute. Finally, what happens, we have what are called negative returns to the variable factor. What now happens is that the fixed factor is overwhelmed. It's totally overused. There's literally no space. And when we now employ an extra worker, each extra worker, they don't add anything. Each extra worker decreases total output. So we actually have less total output or total product. Product and output are the same thing. Decreases our total product. You would never employ that person, but that's what these three key terms are. So in the short run, as we expand, initially we get teamwork, each worker adds more than the one before. Eventually, each worker adds less than the one before, but is still adding, until finally, we add workers and they start reducing total output and have negative returns to the variable factor.